Welcome to the Sunday, July 23rd, Brian Harman music edition of the PFF forecast. We are doing a little AFC West. But first, we'll have to talk about Brian Harman cashing at like 120, 125 to 1, as we talked about in our British Open preview. Honestly, wish I had been more bullish on a guy that looks like somehow a still confused, angsty 14-year-old who listens to punk rock. We're going to talk about it all. It's going to be a great podcast. We might even get into a little Burrow and Herbert debate as well. The AFC West is going to be a great podcast. Let's rock. I'm the biggest loser here amongst what I would say is a podcast full of winners, because if there was one player we aligned on about 4 days ago, it was Brian Harman, who was going off at some ridiculous odds. I will say that in him winning, it was probably one of the more boring British Opens for anyone out there that didn't bet Brian Harman. So I guess really this is a PSA: bet golf majors. that's the big takeaway. Judah, you made like 10K. How addicted to golf are you at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's electric. The sport is absolutely electric. Obviously, getting out on the course has helped, only just to see like how much better these pros are. But I mean, you win. I won my first tournament, and then you win 10K on this one. I'm in the lucky spot where I saw that you guys agreed on Brian Harman, and I was like, all right, I got to go all in. So I'm really the beneficiary here. But I mean, the sport's electric. There's no other way to put it.
We have a pool that we do with the PFF has a fair number of golf fans, and we do a little pool. We did it for the U.S. Open. If you listen to our podcast on Wednesday, we talked you through the draft. I won't regale you with the entirety of my team, but I will say that Brad's team beat my team by, let's take a look at the scoreboard here. Brad's team finished 2 under par in total across 6 players. That beat me by 60 strokes. 60 strokes. Brad, you obviously had Brian Harman. Talk me through how you're feeling right now.
Yeah, the funny thing is I took Harman in the 5th round and Tom Kim in the 4th round, and they basically won the entire thing for me. Judah and I were talking pre-show. During the Wednesday show, I was sitting there, and I just blanked on John Rahm and took Brooks. I mean, I probably would have taken Brooks anywhere. He was obviously a strong contender, but I think if I had Rahm on my mind, I would be like, Spaniard playing in the Open. Like, I probably would have at least considered it, and then it would have been an absolute bloodbath. But, yeah, it's pretty dope that like a lot of those late round picks were huge for a bunch of players in the pool, because there were obviously some good players in the leaderboard, but you go look at the guys who missed the cut. It's like the first 2 rounds of our draft, like half the guys didn't even make the cut.
That was exactly what sunk me. Dustin Johnson and Tony Finau absolutely destroyed me. DJ shot 81 in round 2. And the way we do it, we double for players that missed the cut. We double your score. So your round 1 and round 2 count as round 3 and round 4 as well. So that absolutely killed me, but you're right. I mean, I took like the players that I took that did well were Cam Young. I took in the 4th round. Judah was the only one who got killed by his 4th and 5th round picks with Gooch and Kirk, who both missed the cut. But yeah, I have some learning to do. I'm going to go back and watch some film. Maybe I need to do a little more of my social media research on some of my players. I feel like I missed something with Dustin Johnson. I was sitting there. I remember when I was picking him, I was debating between him and Fleetwood. And I took DJ because I was like, Fleetwood's just such an erratic guy. He could go out and, it could be a high number early or something. I feel like Dustin's a safe play, not to be the case. Let me ask you guys this though. Takeaways from this tournament. Anything, I mean, there's no more majors left to go. There obviously are golf tournaments. Anything that came out of this, start with you, Brad, that you think is useful for us going forward?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit pre-show again, where obviously the links courses, you don't need to be super long. I mean, Brian Harman's 5'7", 140 pounds soaking wet. But I still think it's interesting that a guy like Cam Young, a guy like Rory can just shrink this course so much to where they basically have a wedge in every single time. Obviously, they were both outside the top 100 in strokes gained putting, so that's going to sink you. But there are some players that I think, going forward, I'll look at a little bit differently. Like, he didn't play great on the weekend, but I think Siwoo Kim's going to win a major. He's also the most electric guy maybe on tour. I don't know if you guys, every time he's on the green, everyone just starts going, woo, and it's awesome. And I think his partner hated it the entire time, but I was loving it. He's just very good ball striker, and the putter failed him on the weekend, but he has every piece of his game. It's kind of a random takeaway, but I think he's a really, really good player that'll win for a long time.
Yeah.
Anything on your end?
I think it's from a betting side, and I think it's especially true in golf. It's somewhat true in football, but like betting long shots, I think the logic is like, oh, I don't see Brian Harman winning. Like, it's just not going to happen, kind of until it does. And like, meaning if we reset the odds now, like make it, let's say 80-1, just because we like, oh, he has that major win. So I think when you're taking those long shot bets, like I bet the same unit I did on Brian Harman to win as I did for him to finish top 10. Just being like, if there's value here, there's value here, even if he hasn't won yet. And I think that's kind of important context to always remember when betting a long shot. It's like, yeah, it's a long shot for a reason. And until it hits, it's going to seem kind of crazy. But once you do, you're very happy that you kind of put the right unit on that.
Play off that really quickly, too. The beauty of it, this is why I love betting on golf, is let's say a guy does get a lead like that, and let's say Harman blew it. I hedged on Rahm on Saturday. I hedged on, I think, 4 guys that finished top 15, and obviously into the bankroll a little bit. But if Harman did collapse, I think I would have still won the tournament and all 4 guys I bet on. I checked their pre-tournament odds versus when I bet them, and it was better prices on all 4 guys. And they're all top 10 golfers in the world. So I think that the part of the long shot is a great point, but also you can still just kind of lock in earnings if they get off to a good start and then fizzle, down over the weekend.
Yeah, that's a really good point. My takeaway is this, guys. I would probably feel safer. I'll ask you guys. Your life is on the line. Do you feel more confidence swimming through shark-infested waters against cocaine sharks in the Atlantic Ocean down by Florida, wherever the cocaine sharks reside, or have Rory McIlroy with an 8-foot putt that he needs to make to keep you alive? Which one do you feel more confident in?
I'll take my chances in the open seas.
Yeah, it's gotta be. It's gotta be the answer.
I would feel so much more confident against the Sharks. I mean, not even remotely close. So that's my takeaway. Before we get into the AFC West, speaking of takeaways, we also have giveaways. We gave away 3 printing press hats. I've got some right here. Shipping more out. We've got this is what they look like. We're going to give away 3 more, and the way to enter, it's very simple. You go join the Printing Press Discord, which you have not, if you have not already, you're missing out. Not only do we bet golf, we talk about things live during the rounds as well, but if you're betting other things during the summer, like WNBA, a lot of really good sharp bettors that are in there. So it's a good value for you to join anyways, but this will also allow you to win a really cool piece of merch. We're going to get some more merch for the season once we run out of hats. But you join the Printing Press Discord. The link is in the tweets that we send out, also in the description of this YouTube video that you're watching, or if you're listening, go to YouTube, check it out. And then what you're going to do is you're going to complete the Immaculate Grid. Brad, what's the URL for that? You'll post it. Brad will post it.
Yeah, I'll post it.
If you haven't played the Immaculate Grid yet, it is a lot of fun. And by the way, you can win by doing really well there, but give it a try. No matter what, we will pick some. There'll be some randomness here. Someone pulled out a long snapper in one of theirs that got them a hat. So go have some fun with it. All you have to do is post your submission to enter, and then we'll select from the group and give out some more hats. So go do that on the Printing Press Discord. Okay, let's get into the AFC West. So we've been going through the divisions here. The AFC West, not surprising. The Kansas City Chiefs minus 165 to win the division. The Chargers plus 340. The Russell, Hustle, and Bustle Denver Broncos are plus 550. And my Las Vegas Raiders are 12-1. So what does that mean about the implied probability? The Chiefs, 62% to win, the Chargers, 23%, the Broncos, 15%. I wonder if that might go up if they had Jokic playing quarterback, and the Raiders are at 8%. So as we start with each of these, let's kind of go around the horn. We'll start with you, Brad. Which of these do you think is off by the most? Which one is the price that can be most taken advantage of?
I know we kind of fall for this every year, and I say we, not just the three of us, but kind of America's football fanhood at large. But like, there is, I think, some fragility with the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, they should be the heavy favorite. They should be the heavy favorite to win the Super Bowl every year of Patrick Mahomes' career. But the offensive line, you know, they obviously added Juwan Taylor, but their injuries there could be interesting. They have some depth, but it's not anything special. The defensive line, if they don't get Chris Jones done, is a massive question mark. There's enough fragility that I think you probably could get a decent value on the Chargers, but it's hard to not view the Chiefs as the heavy favorite here as they are.
I'm kind of torn here, honestly, between the Chargers and the Broncos. I'm going to say the Broncos are the most overvalued. I think there's a lot of talk about Sean Payton, Russell Wilson. I don't buy that. We can get into that later. I think what no one's really talking about is the fact that this defense was amazing last year. By my metrics, they were the second best defense in the NFL. That's going to regress. So not only does Russell Wilson now have to take this kind of magical leap with Sean Payton, which I'm not buying, but in addition, the defense has to kind of sustain its play if it's going to, if the Broncos are going to look anything like last year, and I don't think that's going to happen at all. I see this defense regressing. I see a pretty bad offense, and they're being priced like Russell Wilson. It's 2020, and this defense is going to remain elite. I just don't see that happening.
Kind of on the same page with you guys there. I mean, I think you could make an argument, and this is the one that I will kind of make here, that the closeness of the three teams that are not in Kansas City, they're pretty close. And the difference, I think, the one difference is that I do have more faith in Herbert than I do, obviously, in Russell and Jimmy G. But I have a lot of concerns about the formerly San Diego Chargers in the secondary. J.C. Jackson was a big investment on their part. He was absolutely horrific last year. Derwin James has been really good, but every other player that plays coverage for them has been pretty much subpar. I mean, they need Asante Samuel Jr. to continue to play really well. One of the challenges with that, though, is that coverage is such a fragile and unstable metric. I mean, there's a chance that they're in kind of a pit of misery there. Now, they have Bosa and Khalil Mack, and I do think Bosa underperformed last year. He was injured a little bit. But I am not going to fall for the San Diego Charger hype. So I think that the answer is it's either Kansas City, which is too low, or the idea that Las Vegas is also too low, and that they have as much of a puncher's chance as, say, the Denver Broncos or even potentially the Chargers, with an incredible receiving core. I think, Jimmy G, who I will make the argument, I will die on this hill that he gets way too much hate, and Max Crosby, who's an incredible pass rusher, against some other teams in the Chargers and the Broncos that I think are being a little bit overvalued there. So I'm kind of on the same page with you guys. Let's talk about some bets here. So if you're, betting the division, that's not the only way to bet these teams in this division. So thinking about other bets that we like, maybe correlated with the kind of thesis that we have about these teams. Brad, where do you go?
Yeah, so like we said, the division I think is not super interesting. I have a couple props. If we don't want to get into props, we can wait. But that's immediately where I go. I think we've talked a ton about the addition of Kellen Moore for this offense. A couple stats that kind of just not just saying that and having a narrative. But Austin Eckler had 13 rushing touchdowns last year. 10 of them were from 10 yards or less. 6 of them were from 5 yards or less. And then Josh Kelly also had 2 rushing touchdowns of 5 yards or less. You look in the red zone, Herbert, I think, averaged 4.7 yards per attempt from the 20-yard line down to the 5. I think I did it. I didn't want to do it like at the goal line. So they were never trying to actually throw it into the end zone. They were just trying to pick up 6 yards or whatever, and then have Eckler run it in or Josh Kelly run it in or whatever. So I just think you're going to see them actually throwing the ball down in the red area, trying to score touchdowns. You add in Quentin Johnston. His over-under is 29.5 touchdown passes, which is a pretty high number. But look, it's Justin Herbert. He had 38 2 years ago. He had 31 his rookie season, which is a record. Yes, only 25 last year, but was hurt the whole season, was throwing the ball 4 yards down the field in Joe Lombardi's offense. And I just think you're going to see him have more opportunities to throw touchdowns when they get down there. They're not going to rely on all these short passes and then letting Eckler just finish up the drive. So, I just think it's simply too low of a number. And I think they're going to really try to beef up his touchdown passes, when they get down there.
I was holding on this for a little later, but I'll just bring it up here because it's so incredible. In the NFL last year, Justin Herbert ranked first in percentage of the time that he targeted a running back or fullback. 24%. So, this is amazing, right? Like, you should go to jail if this is what you do with a guy with this much arm talent. If you were to say, okay, let's look at all the quarterbacks in the NFL and which ones do you think should target players from the backfield most? Herbert is right there with Josh Allen, like dead last in that list of players. And yet somehow they have concocted an offense that does this at the highest rate in the NFL. It's flat out criminal. And I think the take here, and I like that way of betting it, I really do, because it avoids the certainty that is the Los Angeles Chargers failing to win enough games or collapsing when you most need them to actually figure it out. Like, that's going to happen about the Chargers. So finding a way to bet the narrative of Kellen Moore comes in, isn't an idiot, and the team is really motivated, I think, from a media standpoint and a culture standpoint to push Herbert up. And we'll talk about this a little bit here. We got into it last week a little bit with the Burrow versus Herbert conversation, and Judah will dive into that with us a little bit. But I really like that narrative, Brad. Judah, what other angles do you like here in the AFC?
Yeah, I love the Broncos alt under 6.5. I think get it 230. Circa's probably going to have the best number if you have access to that book. I don't, so I don't have that offhand. I kind of alluded to this earlier. I don't think Russell Wilson is going to be a great fit in the Sean Payton system. I think Drew Brees was the most accurate quarterback in the NFL by the incredible margin. I have the accuracy numbers in front of me from quarterbacks from 2015 and he holds the top 3 ranks. Russell, and this is at 55% accurate throws and then 53 and 53. Russell Wilson, in contrast, even when he was good, right, even in the 2019, 2020 years, we're talking about a 39% accuracy, 43%, 44%. Last year, 38%. Right, that's a huge difference in executing an offense, which is reliant on short passes and accuracy to lead to yards after the catch. Russell Wilson's not that type of quarterback. He's a guy who throws the moon ball downfield. Also, the Broncos don't really have those receivers. Jerry Jeudy, fine, but Cortland Sutton's kind of a get downfield and catch the ball type of guy. Same with Tim Patrick. These are not your Michael Thomases of the world. Who can kind of find the open crevice in space. And I don't trust Russell Wilson to be able to get the ball there. I don't think it's a great fit in the system. And I think it's about kind of setting the rate, the base rate, the expectation for the Broncos are. This is a team last year that won 4 games. Fundamentally, we're probably a 4-1 team by most efficiency metrics. They were bottom 3 in the NFL. That's a huge leap to kind of adjust their win total by 3-4 games, in addition to the defensive stuff, which I already talked about. I absolutely love the Broncos alt under, playing in a tough division in a tough AFC. I can't get enough of it.
It's interesting. You bring up the Wilson and Brees comparison. I think it's noteworthy because not only was Brees remarkably accurate, and by the way, the Herbert number that I just pulled is from the QB annual, the PFF QB annual, which you can now get on PFF.com. It got a full makeover. Really cool. Some amazing data points, including the accuracy charting that we do, where we chart, where the ball, the throw location actually ends up, which is incredibly useful in, thinking about, okay, well, how accurate is a quarterback? And you can look at that also by different kind of sections of the field. And what do we know about Russell Wilson? He has never thrown over the middle of the field. This is a place where Drew Brees absolutely ate. I mean, he was so good. Between 10 and 19 yards down the football field, Russell Wilson had, over the middle of the field, negative 5.1% accuracy relative to average. So he's 5.1% less accurate. And those are, throws that are basically on the receiver's frame than the average NFL quarterback. That is really hard to do. He's also negative. He's worse than average across both the outside left and outside right numbers between 10 and 20 yards down the football field. And that's really concerning because the style of offense, to your point, Judah, is not one where they're just going to drop back and throw the moon ball. And I don't know that he has the receivers do that anyways. So it is a really good point. And I like that. I like that one quite a bit. Let's get in a little bit to the Herbert conversation. And maybe in the context of, a Patrick Mahomes, a Joe Burrow, the two guys that graded highest in the NFL last year, along with Josh Allen. And you put Herbert in that conversation, I think, based on talent. And many would say based on performance, he's fallen well short of that. You made a nice argument last week, Judah, kind of articulating how this is maybe a little bit skewed. I want to start, though, with you, Brad. And how do you kind of compare and rank those four quarterbacks? I think obviously Mahomes at the top, but how do you think about it, and how do you compare and contrast Herbert to those three?
So I think we often look at the things that a quarterback can control the most, and Herbert does show up better than Burrow. Pressure to sack rate. His turnover-worthy play rate, which we should caveat, it is the lowest in the NFL, I think, the last 2 years, but it's also because he's throwing 1,000 passes 4 yards down the field. But nevertheless, like, the things he can control are very, very strong, and a lot of the stable metrics, out of a clean pocket, he's very, very good, as is Joe Burrow, of course. It's just the physical tools and the physical talent is just different. Where I think Burrow right now might be the best pre-snap, knowing where he's going with the football before he even has the ball in his hands. Now that Tom Brady's done, he might be the best in the NFL in that regard. But I just think Mahomes, Allen, and Herbert are just significantly better athletes. The arm talent, the off schedule, the off platform throws. Again, Burrow can do these things, but just not, I think, at their level. I would go, if you had to rank them, Mahomes, obviously, and I still think the gap from Mahomes to the rest is bigger than people probably give credit for. And then I would say you can argue Burrow and Allen. I lean Allen a little bit, but I would understand a Burrow argument. And then I do put Herbert 4, but I think, he could be 2 by the end of the season, realistically.
Judah, the floor is yours. Why don't you take us through your argument?
Yeah. I'm going to say that the Herbert conversation is also skewed by the fact that he came on as so dominant. He had such an incredible rookie season. And I'm looking at certain things that are less performance-based and more kind of like the component parts of quarterback play, more of his process, if you will. I'm looking at things like his accuracy rate, the percentage that he throws to open receivers. I've built some of my own metrics that will soon be out on pff.com, like an on-base percentage for a quarterback and a slugging for quarterback, for those unfamiliar with baseball. On-base percentage is like your ability to get on base. It's like a single or a double is not counted the same. Slugging, the further you go in total bases, going from a single to a double to a triple to a home run will get you more points. In all of these facets, it's kind of remained level from his rookie season, which started at an incredibly high mark. Like, his accuracy rate has not moved from 45% in these metrics, and his on-base percentage, he hasn't moved. Most quarterbacks, even Patrick Mahomes, there's a constant curve where your accuracy, your percentage of throws to open receivers as opposed to tight windows, the open receivers goes up, the tight windows goes down. That's true for basically every single quarterback in the NFL except for Justin Herbert. And he kind of started at this like ridiculous peak that is completely uncharted territory for quarterbacks. Burrow, on the other hand, kind of took a regular development curve. He wasn't so accurate his first year. He was throwing to fewer open receivers, more tight windows, and each year he's gotten better and better and better. So when we talk about Herbert now, it's kind of like, well, we have 3 years of him being amazing. Change. The thing with Burrow is 2020 conversation is kind of irrelevant because that's not the sample that we care about. The sample that we care about is his progression, which is probably, most closely resembles 2022. And that's a guy who's playing at the same level of Herbert and all of these intangibles, in addition to all the other things we mentioned last week about kind of his willingness and knowledge of his offense and receivers. How does this all fit in? With Herbert, it's the Kellen Moore conversation is super interesting. This, I would imagine, is going to be the best offense he's been in. But I'm not sure I agree with you, George, on the point about checkdowns. I think Herbert is a little bit responsible for that. He takes a lot of checkdowns in spots where a guy like Mahomes or Allen would try and engineer throws. I think Herbert's a little kind of timid in that way. and that shows up in this metric. He's his slugging percentage is very low. His on base percentage is very high. That's not true of Burrow. How will that change in Kellen Moore's system? That's an obvious question. They're talking about throwing the ball down the field. Will they do it? I have no idea. I don't really know where to put him. I'd have him tied, I would say, at third. I know that's a little bit of a cop-out, but it's so system dependent. And I think what makes Mahomes and Allen so special is that they can win in every single facet of the game. Herbert's not going to, scramble out of an obvious sack opportunity and kind of find Kelsey on a broken play. That's not his game. Those guys are more system independent because they can just create for themselves. In that way, I think it's dependent. I know it's the cop-out answer, but I think we'll really wait and see.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I alluded to this, I think, last time we spoke, but this is from Timo. I think I said the stat before, but this is quarterback and situation ranked by EPA per play since 2021. Patrick Mahomes, regardless of who he's playing with, is top of the list, 0.23. Justin Herbert, with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams on the field, is in second at 0.20. Josh Allen, when Diggs and Davis are on the field, when they're playing, 0.18. Matt Stafford, 0.15. Tua, 0.14. Dak Prescott, 0.13. Joe Burrow with Chase and Higgins on the field, 0.13. And this paints obviously a very interesting picture where you think about Herbert and the number of injuries that not only he has suffered, but that he has dealt with from a receiving standpoint. And so I do think that it's I will agree with you, Judah, and I think it's actually impossible to have a fair and nuanced discussion about these two players. Because if you're looking at performance overall, I think it's very, very hard to concoct a narrative where Justin Herbert is better than Joe Burrow. But when you kind of try and piece some things together, when you look at when both receivers are on the field, you can construct a narrative where, yeah, he is on that same playing field. The challenge for me, I think, is what you talked about, Brad, which is the ability for Joe Burrow. And I think Burrow and Mahomes are the two that do this the best. And you can find these data points in the PFF QB annual as well. How does a quarterback perform when he's blitzed? How does a quarterback perform when the defense is trying to do some things to get the quarterback kind of out of their comfort zone? And this is where Burrow continues to shine. He had the highest PFF passing grade against the blitz last year. He brought his time to throw down below 2.5 seconds last year. He was first in the NFL when working out of no play action. He was first in the NFL when he was facing single high. He was fifth in the NFL when facing two high. Like, the guy was just so malleable. And obviously it helps having Chase and Higgins. I'm not saying that Herbert couldn't do that, but simply that Herbert hasn't done that yet. He performed not very well against the blitz last year, 64.5 PFF passing grade against the blitz last year, which was just 21st, was 18th against too high. So I think there are a lot of things to Herbert's game. And the question is this because Joe Lombardi has no idea what a modern NFL offense should look like? Is this because Keenan Allen and Mike Williams can't stay on the field? Or is this because Herbert doesn't get as much out of his rocket and arm and physical tools as he possibly could? So I think the proper tiering of this is Mahomes 1, and then those three guys in a tier of their own. And I would say right now you give Burrow the slight edge, and right behind him Allen, and then behind him Herbert. But to say that that's for sure how they're going to end up this year, I think you're just kind of ignoring the simple fact that context changes. And the point of doing these rankings is not to say, hey, this is exactly how it's going to end up next year, but this is how I'd have them based on their prior performance. And given the talent that each of these guys have, it's very easy to see them ending up in a different order next year. I think with the exception of Mahomes at number 1, it would be very hard for me to see him not ending up at number 1. That was a long diatribe. You guys didn't sign up, so I apologize. Brad, a question for you kind of around the Chiefs, because we got yelled at for not talking about the Steelers, so I don't want to not talk about the Chiefs. People will get mad. How fragile do you think they are? I mean, you mentioned this kind of at the beginning. It feels to me like they've become a lot less fragile over the last couple of years where I might have said, if Kelsey gets hurt or if Hill gets hurt, obviously if Mahomes gets hurt, they're kind of screwed. But how fragile or lack thereof do you think this team is?
They certainly have. I think it's the smartest thing they've done is to, move on from expensive players to build out depth. Their linebacker core might be the best in the NFL. But for me, it comes down to like the defensive line. If they don't, they're going to get Chris Jones done. But sophomore and rookie edges, Frank Clark is obviously not a phenomenal player, but he's a solid player. The secondary is pretty good as well. But it's just, I don't know if Kelsey does go down, like Kadarius Toney's hurt again as of today after trying to shag a punt in practice. Rashee Rice was throwing up on the field at his first practice. Sky Moore is Sky Moore. Like, I don't know. I think there is some fragility there. I think Mahomes obviously makes up for it to a great degree. And they do have depth. The question, honestly, a better way to phrase is just like, how much can Mahomes mask? And I think right now the answer is more than anyone by an order of magnitudes.
I come back. I'm curious your take here, Judah. I think they are still pretty fragile. We've talked about this a little bit. I feel that Kelsey is a wide receiver one, right? He is a player that is so good at what he does. He lines up in the slot a ton. I mean, they even line him up out wide. And it's like a black hole, right? Where like you have to always game plan against him. And so I think that we give Mahomes a lot of credit, and rightfully so. But I don't want to give him so much credit in saying that, man, he has no receivers and manages to do these amazing things. That's not entirely true. And I want to make a comparison. I think obviously Mahomes has so much more physical talent than Tom Brady did. But when Tom Brady when all of a sudden Gronk disappeared, right? And he had no receiving talent, Edelman was always banged up. He looked awful. Remember? And I mean, that last game against the Titans where his last throw was Logan Ryan picks him off, pick six, and he's going to the Bucs. And it's like, does Brady still have it? I'm not saying that I want to see like Mahomes without Kelsey, but I do think they're fragile to the extent where if Kelsey is not there, I would be concerned, right? With a team that you feel like it's impossible to be concerned about. Where do you land on that, Judah?
Yeah, I think I'm with you, George. And also we had kind of an example of this in the AFC Championship game last year, where like at a certain point, even with Kelsey healthy, when the receivers got down to, I don't even know who was playing. It was complete no-name backups. I'm trying to remember. I'm a little disappointed.
I know, like Demarcus Robinson wasn't there. I'm like trying to think.
Yeah,
anyway,
all the classic Chiefs guys weren't even there. And like they couldn't move the ball. Granted, Mahomes was a little bit hurt. He's not immune. We've also seen that with the offensive line in the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay. He's not immune to everything going awry. But that's honestly not the argument I'd make for the Chiefs and their fragility. They've won a ton of one-score games. And that's not to say that they don't have an inherent advantage. Like they do. With Mahomes, they're going to be at an advantage in one-score games. And this is not to say like, oh, they're fragile, they're going to win 8 games. But they might not win 13. Last year, they had this third most one-score wins behind the Giants and Vikings. They won 7 games by 1 score. This has been a theme for years now where they just can't, they can't cover 6.5. That's what we always say. Let teams hang around games. At some point, one of these years, I think they'll go 10-7 because, they'll go, 4-8 in one-score games because some fluky thing's going to happen. Mahomes is going to throw that interception like he did against Buffalo. And they might not win 14 games. That is very possible. There's so much randomness in one-score games. And yes, it's Mahomes. And yes, he has a better chance. But they're fragile and they're not beating teams by 10-14 like the Eagles were last year. There's inherent fragility there.
Okay, so we'll tee this one up. We're going to come back from my award-winning ad read and kind of talk about what's the narrative that gives you a different team winning this division than the Kansas City Chiefs. But before we do, you don't want to deal with fragility on your fantasy team, and that is why Best Ball is a great place to invest some of your hard-earned dollars. And the reason for that is we draft a team, and then if a player gets hurt, he doesn't play. The guys that accumulate the most points start and count for your team every single week. So you don't have to worry about ads, drops, trades, and that whole bunch of baloney. Go draft at DraftKings and get a chance to win $1 million top prize. $10 million total dollars in guaranteed cash prizes are up for grabs with the Best Ball DraftKings Championship. I'm blanking on the actual name of it, but that's because I am there it is. DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest. Slight little hiccup, but like Brian Harman, I rebound with a birdie. $1 million top prize, as I mentioned. And here's the best thing. Use promo code PFF when you sign up, and you will get your first entry fee back in DraftKings dollars. So you get a $10 entry fee, you get 10 DK dollars back, and then you can use that to bet on some of the bets that we're talking about here. See DraftKings.com or download the app to enter. This ends on 8/9/23. Of course, 1-800-GAMBLER, one per customer, opt-in required. If you have a gambling problem, make sure you call that number. All right. The narrative that you guys like most, where the Chiefs do not win this division. Brad, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it is kind of regression, all the things we talked about for other teams. And it's still the Chargers for me. And I think it's, hey, they're not going to be, bottom 5 in war-adjusted injury, whatever whale stands for. You can help me, Judah. They're not going to be bottom of the league there. They did change their sports science and nutrition people. Maybe that has an impact. Who really knows? I know there's some randomness there, but you don't lose Rashawn Slater and Joey Bosa and Keenan Allen for half the season. And then I think it's, on offense, all those guys do stay healthy. I'll tie this into a bet, but that is the narrative, and I'll tie it into a bet. Keenan Allen's over-under yards 875. He had 700 yards from week 11 to 18 alone last year, had an 85 receiving grade. Like, I think people think he's washed because his hamstrings kind of give him issues. When he does play, he's still awesome. So yeah, it's just health. And then, I agree with you 1,000% on the Broncos. Like, you lose Draymond Jones, you lose Bradley Chubb. I think Damari Mathis is your number 2 corner right now. Like, there's a lot of question marks there. You would just have, I don't know, J.C. Jackson remembers how to play football, and Derwin James stays healthy, and Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack stay healthy. Like, the pieces are there. It's just getting a strong outcome, in a lot of different ways. So you then have a tail and maybe win, 13 games in LA.
Yeah, I don't think it's so far-fetched. I actually like LA as value in this division. I was debating saying that before. I took the Broncos. I think everything we said about the Chargers last offseason just apply to this offseason, to this offseason when there was a ton of hype. But I actually think there are more reasons to be optimistic rather than fewer. First off, I think adding Quentin Johnson to the mix is enormous. They need another guy who can separate. Yes, it's some projection. Rookie wide receivers have been good. They can kind of jump onto the scene in year one. I also think a lot of the narrative here is about Brandon Staley, and will we see the Staley of year 1 or year 2? I'm willing to believe he's going to be much more aggressive in year 1 than year 2, knowing his job is on the line. And actually, the thing he thought would save him from the media actually didn't help at all. And I think there is some talent on this defense. I think Michael Carter, he projects very, very well in a lot of separation metrics, and especially in zone coverage, he pops out. I think if they give him more snaps, rather than J.C. Jackson or Taylor in the slot, just your Taylor, that can help him out. But I think if Staley's defense can kind of stick to its limit explosive plays, generate a pass rush, and Herbert with Kellen Moore throws the ball downfield, everything everyone's making fun of Joe Lombardi for, if it all comes together, like, would it shock anyone? Justin Herbert wins an MVP? Of course not. And I don't even think that's so far-fetched.
As much as I have tried, and I have tried, this, to convince myself that it is the Las Vegas Raiders, I just can't find a narrative for Jimmy G. One of the data points in the QB annual that you'll find is most yards gained on 0 graded throws. So for those of you that don't know, we grade every single throw. We grade every player on every play. But in addition, we grade every single throw. And the 0 graded throws are what's kind of expected. So like the idea is, an average quarterback's just making an average throw and he does it averagely. Okay, great. Jimmy G made more hay on those throws than any other player. And what does that tell you? That tells you that the scheme was getting guys open. He was putting the ball where it needed to be, but those guys were wide open, getting yards after the catch. I don't know if that's going to happen for the Raiders this year. So as much as I want to, it's very, very hard looking at that defense, looking at the lack of an offensive line, especially on the interior. And just knowing that Jimmy G is very fragile himself coming off an injury. So I think you guys are right. And here's the comparison that I would make. Dak Prescott with Kellen Moore has been a very, very productive quarterback. The big difference and the question mark that I have is Dak Prescott has always killed blitz. He's been very, very good before, pre-snap. He is maybe as good as, anyone out there, certainly, in that same tier as Burrow. Is Kellen Moore going to help Justin Herbert do that? And if he does, I think that'll be very, very interesting. I think that's really the piece to his game, in addition to obviously throwing the ball downfield to receivers who are talented, such as the receivers that he has. And I like that MVP bet. I really think that's a good one, especially because it doesn't require them to be successful in the playoffs, which I don't have a ton of faith in the Chargers doing. But there's a lot of room for opportunity because you throw the ball 6.9 yards on average down the football field. That's his average depth target. People have made fun of how much Patrick Mahomes throws short. Mahomes still throws it more than a half yard further down the field on average, which is insane, right? And you think about the different weapons that Herbert has at his disposal. I mean, that's just absolute bananas that he's only throwing at 6.9 yards downfield. I mean, that is like legitimately like Alex Smith territory, which is honestly embarrassing. So I like that. What are the best odds that you found for Herbert MVP, Judah?
Ooh, it's been a while since I looked. I want to say I saw a 12-1.
While you're looking real quick, just to help you, George, on that, a data point to back up your thing, you look at last year, so 2021, not 2022, Herbert was 9th in passing grade against the blitz, and 2020 and 2021 combined is 11th. So still not amazing, but we know it's not a stable metric. And I think not only the Kellen Moore, and again, I know we're kind of like making all this perfect scenario, but you get a Rashawn Slater back. You have Herbert not getting rid of the ball because has broken ribs. And I think you can talk yourself into, all right, he'll be top 10 against the blitz and obviously phenomenal in a clean pocket.
Yeah, he's 15-1 right now on DraftKings. And I think, I love I think what we've done is we've consolidated a few Chargers kind of outcomes that we like that are different than them winning the division. But certainly if they win the division, I think all of these have a really good chance of hitting. Herbert, I see it on DraftKings at 15-1 to win MVP. Being in LA, I think the media plays a really big role in this, right? Herbert is a guy that the media likes. The NFL has a media hub in Los Angeles. They want teams in Los Angeles to be good. There's going to be incentive to push the Herbert narrative. People are going to be a little tired of the Mahomes being so ridiculously good. Josh Allen playing in a really, really tough division. Joe Burrow playing in a really, really tough division. And so I really do like that narrative. Obviously, you have the touchdown. What was the touchdown over under for?
9.5, which he's gone over 2 of his first 3 seasons. And also to your MVP point, he had a great rookie year, but Justin Jefferson probably should have won that award, and they gave it to the quarterback in LA. So,
yeah.
I'd
even add.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to throw on more, and that's Coach of the Year, Brandon Staley at 25-1. On this same theme of narratives and LA, like if this team kind of edges the Chiefs out, probably means they're winning, 12, 13, 14 games. Which is well exceeding their win total, which is often how this award is based off. I can totally see the media making the case like, look at Brandon Staley, most talked about coach after his first 2 seasons, finally coming through, toppling the Super Bowl champion Chiefs at 25-1. I can definitely see that happening. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's a good point. If you want to go really, if you're trying to take our Brian Harman bet and duplicate that, Keenan Allen is 130-1 offensive player of the year, which obviously you've got to have a lot of things go right there. But, it is a good point around how productive he's been when he's been on the field. The addition of Quentin Johnson will help him as well. Mike Williams, the guy that has been also on and off the field a lot. So, when Allen was on the field, but Williams was off, there was obviously a ton of focus on only Allen. So I think it gives him more kind of flexibility in terms of being able to kind of take advantage of offenses. He's a guy that would put up gaudy, I think, reception numbers. And you think about as well what Kellen Moore did with CeeDee Lamb, in the slot. I think he'll do something very similar with Keenan Allen, who's been dominant in the slot over his time in Los Angeles. Any other bets that we like for the AFC West, fellas?
I would just say real quick, tied to yours, if you're afraid of doing offensive player of the year because of quarterbacks and whatever, Keenan Allen is 60-1 to just lead the NFL in receiving yards. And again, like I get they've added pieces, but Herbert had 4,700 passing yards last year, 5,000 year before that. Even if Keenan Allen just got 20% of like his lowest, he's still over 1,000 yards, or close to it. And I think he should have a higher target share. He certainly did when he played, down the stretch last year.
Yeah, it's a good point. Jude, anything else for you?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Devontae Adams under receiving yards. I think the best line I found was 13.25 on Caesars. That's a huge total. I think it's kind of to your point about Jimmy G, that this is a guy who kind of takes what's there, not making any spectacular throws, and I don't see this passing offense being particularly productive. But Devontae Adams is kind of on the decline, as much as that pains me to say as a fan of his. He's 31 years old. His separation numbers have gone down pretty drastically each of the past bunch of seasons. The target competition, they signed Jacoby Myers. They have Hunter Renfrow back. This is a team last year that was trotting out Mac Hollins as the wide receiver 2 for most of the season. I don't think he's going to earn the same target share. I do think the targets coming from Jimmy Garoppolo are less valuable. I wouldn't be shocked if this team kind of tanks. 13.25 is a huge number, and I'll take the under there.
I refuse to fade Jimmy G, but I think that's a very compelling argument, and I would be on that if I didn't have a moral obligation not to disparage the name of Jimmy Garoppolo. All right, that was our podcast. We'll be back on Wednesday evening. We have finished now the AFC, right? So we are on to the NFC. We will start in the East. It'll be a great division to talk about, obviously, with the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Gigantes, and the newly reformed Washington football team. Can't wait to dive into all of that. It'll be a lot of fun. So as a reminder, go join the Printing Press Discord, get yourself a Printing Press hat, enjoy the rest of your Sunday and start your week. And we will see you all on Wednesday night. Peace.